Hello, welcome from my side. Maybe everyone is back from the short coffee break. Yes, I would like to continue with the first presentation about Restore work from Working Group 1. I hope you can hear me quite clearly and you can see my screen. Yes, I think so. Otherwise, Working Group 1 was the first working group of Restore Action. The chair was Martin Brown, I was vice chair. And in these ready events, 3 of us will present the results out of this working group. Also, Plerta Vula is one of our presenter in other working groups. So, just a few words about myself. My name is Edeltraud Haselsteiner. I'm a researcher in very interdisciplinary research projects about buildings, mobility, about living, social aspects, mainly all in an urban context. And to go directly about Restore the work of Working Group 1, maybe just to start with the main idea. I think there is already a long discussion about sustainability. More than 40 years we're discussing, but the progress is rather slow, and we see that climate change is progressing much faster than our sustainability approach. So this, I think, was the main idea, that we also need another or a more ambitious concept about sustainability. It's not enough just to be green or to reduce the impact, but it's much more. But we need to have a positive impact, which enables the social system to regenerative. And you see here a graphic of one of the first ideas about this regenerative sustainability. Regenerative was first promoted by a landscape architect, John Tilman Lyle, and in 1994 he promoted a regenerative cycle model in contrast to a linear input-output model, because he said if we want to have a positive impact, we need a living system and not a linear system. And for this, it's necessary to have ecological and social systems in a harmony, as you can see in this graphic. And for this, we need a positive development, not only, for example, in a technical way, but we need also to include, for example, social aspects and bring this in balance with ecological aims. So what have we done in Working Group 1, as it was the first working group of the Restore Action? At the beginning, it was quite important to find the language of sustainability, I would say, yeah, to find clear definitions, what we want to work about. And so we defined, for example, for sustainability, it's more or less to limit the impact. We try to stay in balance, yeah, to give back as much as we take. And if we go further to restorative, we already work to restore this social ecological system, and regenerative even more needs not only to restore, but also to enable the ecological ecosystem to maintain and to evolve. So just to outline a little bit what was the main idea. And we identified these 4 main triggers for Restore, which is nature, place, economy, and education. Nature means that we also need to think our built environment to be part of the nature, to recognize the place, which means in a cultural way, but could also be in a geographical way, or, for example, the historic importance of a place. Economy, we need to include again social ideas. And as I said already in the beginning, I think we need to develop more a regenerative way of economy. And very important, of course, education, because we need to make clear also for the next generation progress in restorative sustainability. So what out of these 4 triggers, we try to develop our restore visions for these 4 main aspects: nature, place, and economy. As I said before, nature means to move from exploitation to a place-based regenerative design, which is in harmony with nature. In this case, we think, for example, for biophilic design approaches, but also, of course, to use renewable energy resources and try to repair surrounding ecosystems. Concerning place, it's important, not, I think, now from this globalized economy, we have solutions that are used in the same way everywhere, but it's more important to respect more the specific of places and come to more locally, culturally, and environmentally built environments. So economy, I said before, try to move away from this linear growth to a more regenerative or circular economy. And education, not also to include more the people, to enable bottom-up processes to develop towards empowerment and participation. So what does this mean directly for our built environment? For example, restorative regenerative building needs to have positive impact, to have, for example, net positive energy, and very important also to take into consideration, the human life quality. In case of heritage, it's also important to see the sustainable function, for example, to reuse, of course, our already existing built environment, to use materials, to make the heritage accessible and to integrate it again in the community, for example. Also important, of course, health, well-being, and equity on all scales of the system, individual and the whole system, and circular economy to enable another way of growth, or a circular regenerative economy that could be based, for example, on sharing. So now I would like to show you a few examples of sustainable regenerative sustainability in practice. This is, for example, an Curtin Valley. I think it's like a visitor center in a park in the UK. And the concept was not only to minimize the impact of fossil fuel energy, but also to preserve, to consume minimal fossil fuel energy during the whole lifetime of the building. So they used quite a lot of local materials, for example, wood from the surrounding park, but they also used, for example, recycled tires for the foundation. It's a timber frame. They used straw walls, infills for the wall, sheep wool insulation, lime plaster walls, and shingles for the roof. So it's quite a very, it's a very good example for me, for example, for place-based design, but also to use really healthy materials, for example. The second example, it's in Kosovo TV. I think it's a very good example to reuse an industrial building in this case. and it was a manufacturing plant for shock absorbers. And they recycled and reused a lot of materials, not only from the building itself, but also from the surrounding. For example, they reused the bricks and for this, I would like to show you a short video. I hope it works. Oh, no. Sorry for just a moment.
Hello, Edeltraud?
Yes.
We can hear the audio from the video, but we cannot see it at the screen.
Sorry, okay. Just a moment.
No problem.
I think the problem is I have to share the other screen, probably. Can you see the video now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. So I go back to my presentation. So can you see the presentation? Okay.
Callum.
I moved to this. Yeah.
Yes, we can, Edeltraud.
Okay, I think it's really a very beautiful example of reuse and recycling, and I think it's of course much more easier to develop new building with a lot of energy efficiency, but in a way I think it's much more important to reuse what the building stock we have already, and I think this is also a good project, not only from an ecological side, but also from a social side. Another example is an example from Austria. That's Magda's Kitchen. Magda's is a social, it's an NPO, a social business. They started with a hotel and now they have also built or a kitchen where they cook a lot of food for people who need, and they also used a lot of materials that from a demolition place, from a former office building, and for example, this sign from the walls they used from another from a torn down office building, but they also, for example, used the heat from the kitchen to heat the office and the staff rooms, for example. So it's a good example to create a cycle of resources. And a few more examples. For example, this is a seaweed house in Sweden where they have used seaweed material that's in all the transition. Seaweed material was quite the common material to use for buildings, and now this architect again tried to introduce this material, for example, not for the construction, but for the roof, for example, and for the walls. Or this is for me a good example to work with local resources. The building is working without any heating or cooling because they use the solar radiation to heat up the stone, and the stone during the night time gives up the necessary heating for the surrounding, for example. Or the last example I wanted to show, it's a small building for homeless children in India. And what I think it's very nice that the bricks, they built the building with the bricks. At the end, they used it, they cooked the buildings, but also inside they used it as an oven and produced new ceramic material. So also for me, a very good example how we can close the loop and how we can reuse techniques or resources in manifold ways. So yeah, thank you very much. And I hope I could give you a short insight to our work in Working Group 1. If you have any question, please, you're welcome to send me your question, email, or whatever you like.
Thank you very much, Edeltraud, for the presentation. Would you like to have a short discussion on the presentation before we go to the next break? And maybe if they would like to answer some questions, the participants, would that be okay?
Yes, of course, yeah.
So first of all, it's very interesting to see projects around different areas in Europe, like Austria, which is Central Europe, Kosovo, the eastern side of EU, and UK. What was your experience from these three different projects in terms of culture in approaching a regenerative approach for their projects? Is it important to see different project teams or working on different projects from different areas in the Eurozone?
Yes, of course. That was one of the interesting parts also of this Restore Action, that it brought together people from very different countries and with very different cultural background. And I think specifically in the building sector, yeah, we have now a very global development, I would say. Yeah, we have technology that is used in the same way everywhere. But I think it's also important to go back to our initial roots, yeah, and to see what is our local, what do we have locally, what is what was in a way also our culture. As I said, I think a restorative, the main point in restorative sustainability is to respect again more local culture, place, resources from the local community, because then we don't need all this energy for transport, for example. Yeah, and we also can make sure, for example, that it is much more coherent, for example, with our local microclimate. Yeah, so that is quite an important aspect.
So different materials can be more efficient depending on the locality of each project.
Yes,
and can also blend with local architecture and the natural ecosystem in that particular place.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. Just to see if there's anybody would like to ask any questions on the case studies we have just seen. Let me just quickly check. If not, I have one more question, Edeltraud, if that's okay, out of plain curiosity. In terms of academia, because you are a member of the Faculty of Architecture and Planning in Austria, correct? And how do you see the connection gap between all the research that we have from universities, all the skills that are being developed, how easily and how accessible is for people to adapt them at commercial use? Do you think that we would normally require more bridges between the two areas?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I only know the situation in Austria. I don't know in other countries, but for example, also in Austria, we still have a gap, I would say, not only between universities and the practice, but also we have, for example, a big program for research, yeah, and also this research community very often stays in a specific group, yeah, and it's very difficult to roll out in a very broad way, yeah. But yes, that's still a challenge, I would say, yeah, how we bring our ideas, yeah, to really in the practice, yeah. But the best way is, as we have seen, I think, to produce good examples, yeah, to produce pilots, yeah, to have good projects where others really can see how it works, yeah. And this, I think, is always the best way to promote another way of building.
And one last question from Thomas Holmes. He asked if you can share more about the seaweed that was used in the modest seaweed house. It looks like an incredible project.
Yes, I can try to find a link about the information and put it in the chat room. I will do it in a few minutes. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And also, if you can provide us with the link from the project in Kosovo, that YouTube link that you showed us. So maybe people would like to see that. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes,
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.